Bonjour.
And welcome to Foreplay Matters because
it matters.
I'm Madame Beaucoup.
And I'm Madame Oui.
And welcome to the show today.
Yeah. This is an interesting show.
How so, Madame Oui?
Well, we're going to talk about fantasies.
Hey, I like fantasies.
You do?
Yeah, I do. Okay, so,
so tell me a little bit about your fantasies you like.
Excuse me. So, I'll get there. We're going to be talking about what women fantasize about and what we think men fantasize about.
We're going to say think.
What we think, if you disagree or you have something interesting, drop it in the comments, please. Drop it in the comments. And you can find us where? Our social media
is Secret Society Life, and our website is secretsociety.life.
Okay, so very good. So let's get into it. So we have a list here of top sexual fantasies for women. So I'm just gonna touch on a couple.
I want you to touch on a couple, but I'm just curious now, Ma'am. You say, I want to hear about your fantasy. Can we start with that?
My fantasy?
Yeah, let's start with your fantasy.
My fantasy is a reality.
Is it a reality show?
Yeah, I really don't, I've pretty much done it all. But the one that gives me most joy is when I'm in a dominatrix kind of situation. And so you've heard the story. You should have did it yourself. You should have got into it yourself first, okay? You want to hear the story again? Here we go. All right. So usually that's what gets me off. I love the fact that someone is putting their entire trust in me. We have lots of wonderful conversation beforehand.
What you fantasize about? That's what you do.
But I'm saying that I've pretty much done all the fantasies. I've knocked them all off. Check, check, check. Stranger in the park.
In a plane.
In a
Mile High Club.
Yeah, but maybe that's yours. That's stressful to me.
That's stressful.
To be in an airplane and then the flight attendant, excuse me, ma'am, no, that's not my thing.
No fantasy about taking a Molly and just letting it go and see what happens.
Checked off the list. Maybe you want to talk about your fantasy. Why don't you get into your fantasy? Sorry.
I mean, yeah, ecstasy, Molly. I mean, growing up, it was like, say no to drugs, and it's like now when you're older and you're over 40 and it's like you want to experience some different things, and you watch.
Before I die.
Yeah, and you watch, what's that show? I love that show with Issa Rae.
Insecure.
Yeah. I love that show.
Yeah.
And how they
shout out to Issa Rae.
Yes, definitely. In the whole cast, the girl power and everything. And a lot of them are comedians, and they're so funny. But I don't remember the episode when they took the Molly. They were at Coachella.
I remember that. Yes.
And it was just hilarious, and just the way that you feel. I feel like I want to experience that because I've never experienced anything like that.
So this is a fantasy that you have not fulfilled yet. So it's on the list.
It's on the list, I mean, I've done it with edibles, and that was a great experience. Okay. I will say so.
Okay.
But yeah, with the whole ecstasy, because what it's supposed to bring.
Yeah.
It's supposed to, my whole thing is
drop all your inhibitions.
Oh yes.
Okay. That's it. You have not done that yet. You want to see what would really happen.
I want to see what really will happen.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what.
Okay. You want to see what? I don't know if they're ready.
Well.
Is the room soundproof?
Probably not.
Okay. Go to a hotel.
Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of my fantasy. I mean, because I'm kind of there too. I've kind of fulfilled several things.
Yeah.
But right now that's the one, and that's probably because I wanna feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see how I wanna feel.
Like the Tin Man. I wanna feel. Okay. All right. So just humor me. I do have this nice little article in front of me, so I'm going to just run through a couple because I don't have. Maybe you can, spark some joy in me. Maybe you can make a suggestion. I don't know. Drop it in the comments. Drop it in the comments.
Drop it in the comments.
Okay, so there is for women, strangers in the night.
Strangers in the night.
Strangers in the night. So it says many women relish the idea of meeting up with a mystery man and going to some no-name motel with him for a wild night of uninhibited sex. Is this a fantasy that has ever crossed your mind, you've ever played around with while you play around with yourself? You know, something
Because
that you
I do a lot of playing with myself.
That's another conversation.
Well, I mean, I kind of been there, done that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, you kind of out. I mean, I think every woman kind of has that fantasy. Like, you just out, you're at the bar, you see someone across the bar, he's sexy, he's your type, it's like, some eye candy or something like that.
Yeah.
And you have a fantasy. You could be daydreaming or night dreaming or alcohol dreaming.
Molly dreaming.
Molly dreaming. You know, that you have that fantasy to have that person take you, right?
Yeah. So when we talk about fantasy, are we talking about actually fulfilling a fantasy with the actual thing that we've been fantasizing about, or role playing the fantasy that we have that's been playing around in our head?
Well, that's both. I mean, fantasy can be either one,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, at the end of this day, of course, it starts as a fantasy. It's in your head and you're playing it out in your head. But the whole idea is, I mean, have a little fun. Actually do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully you can try to. However, I don't know what your circumstances are.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't know
The
if you can.
proverbial hands go with
You
that.
know, if you can actually follow through with some of your fantasies.
Depends on the fantasy.
It depends on the fantasy.
Okay.
It depends on your situation.
Right.
And how far you want to take it. Right. So, I mean, the strangers in the night, I mean, I guess that can remain as a fantasy for some.
Or role play it.
Or role play it with your significant other.
Yeah.
And see, that's the beauty of foreplay. You know, role playing is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And the trust that
That you build.
in being able to share that with somebody and then like co-signing and saying, okay, yeah, you want to do that? Fine. All
Right, right.
What time you want to meet? 7 at the bar. All right. Don't know ya.
Right.
So then there's the more the merrier.
What's that one?
The more the merrier is group sex. And they're saying women
Oh.
fantasize about group sex. Now, I saw a porno many years ago. It's old school, called Taboo. And
I
in
know
Taboo,
a club that's called Taboo.
I don't know the club, but I know the movie. And it's about the, 70s or 80s, which I like old school porn, if we can talk about it one other day. But one of the scenes was a group sex scene. And it was this woman, and she went to this party with this guy, and he just sprung it up on her. She didn't know that there was a party that was going to be happening. And then she got into it for a little bit, and
But
then,
she wasn't aware.
She wasn't aware.
That's
Okay.
kind of a no-no.
So that's another thing, you know, when you're embarking on these fantasies and you get it in your pretty little head that you're going to surprise your mate.
Yeah.
You know, don't surprise me. I don't like surprises.
Well, I mean, and that, like I said, that's a no-no because, again, communication.
Right.
You know, you can't spring that on somebody because you have to have those type of conversations going into something like that if you're going to fulfill or play out that fantasy, because you never know what situation you're getting in, and safe words need to be put in place. Why is that? Because of boundaries and safety.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, at the end of the day, with your partner, you need to create a safe environment.
Yeah.
So, so definitely communication. Don't be surprising, you know, because it's an art and a science.
Yeah.
To the more the merrier.
Do you think that women in general have this as a fantasy? I mean, I don't know.
You think that's more a male fantasy?
I do, but it's under the category of women, and so maybe I don't know.
I mean,
drop it in the comments.
Drop it in the comments.
Let
but
us know.
But I can elaborate on that a little bit. I mean, some women actually do maybe fantasize about if their partner, their man or their mate or whatever is giving more time and attention to a best friend. That best friend could be a female. That best friend could be a male, right? And so this is where you start playing out certain things of, well, since y'all so close, why don't you bring them into the bedroom? So it's...
If you can handle it.
So,
If you
you know,
bad.
that could possibly be a fantasy of yours that you're planning in your head, because that's where the fantasy starts. The fantasy starts in your head, right? So you just never know as far as what's going on in the dynamics of your relationship, possibly with outside people. And then also, too, who knows how the person is, if they're a little flexible and want to explore. Or if it's a fantasy, I mean, I think most women do maybe have a fantasy of more the merrier, but the thing is, they probably have that fantasy of two men. Most women, if you talk to them and ask them about the more the merrier,
it's coming.
It's two men. Well, that should be in the more the merrier.
Well, I don't think that they consider three people a group. I think that in the article it's a threesome. There's not a group setting.
So
it's like
a group
orgy.
is an orgy.
Yeah. So I think that's why I was asking.
Oh.
Do women think about
women probably be more comfortable in an orgy?
Yeah.
You know, because women start to get conscious of their bodies. Yeah. You know, you got a whole bunch of people, then you know all eyes aren't on you.
Right.
All performance isn't on you. Whereas a threesome, you know, it's kind of like you got to perform.
You do, and also what you were talking about is bringing somebody in that you might have already thought about, or you have a relationship with, a best friend or something. That gets tricky too, you know. That gets really tricky also, because how do you navigate the relationship after this event happened? How do you navigate that? So that's the balance in having these fantasies and bringing it into reality. Is like, okay, so then there's aftercare that has to happen. We talked about it before, we're going to have to talk about this after, or it's a long quiet ride home, you know, in the car.
Well, the thing is, once you start introducing multiples or threesomes into your relationship, I mean, at the end of the day, again, there's an art and a science to it. You're going to have a conversation, it's communication, and definitely you create boundaries. So really, there shouldn't be a silence. It should be like a wonderful experience. You're debriefing, saying what you got out of it or so forth, if you actually follow through with your fantasy, because some people have the fantasies and don't actually follow through with it. But communication afterwards is key, and definitely making sure that whoever is having the fantasy, that you have the conversation. But women tend to have to invite in when it comes to that type of fantasy, because again, women are emotional creatures. Most men want to have that fantasy, and they're good. They'll keep it moving. It's women that when you kind of, start engaging in multiples and so forth, then you got to have that conversation, because emotions and especially if it's another woman that you brought into it, creating those boundaries, because when you cross that line, then it starts to go into something else of secrets, lies, mistrust, and so forth, that could potentially affect your relationship.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I agree with that.
Who's your daddy?
Well, that's,
I mean, is that a fantasy? Who's your daddy? Is that spanking me and saying,
yes, that's what they're talking about. They're saying, so you flip it on them, you dominate the man like never before. That women typically are dying.
Women saying
this is the women's list, right?
That's saying to men, who's your daddy?
I don't know why they put it that way.
I think we would say, who's your mommy?
No, I wouldn't even say mommy.
What would you say, Madame Beaucoup?
Who's your madame?
Oh, Madame.
Who's your mistress?
Now I like that.
Now crawl. Anyway, so basically it's spanking him, ordering him to perform certain sexual acts, making him beg for what he wants. It says having him suck on her stiletto heels or some other phallic
So very
object.
Dominatrix.
Very dominatrix.
That's your world.
That's my world, but let me just say this. This is not an easy world to jump into. And you have to have a certain level of respect for whomever you are engaging with this. You have to have trust. I would say that the submissive really has more control than the dominant, because they lay out what it is that they're cool with and what they're not cool with. Right. And if you're dealing in a situation, bringing your fantasy into reality, and you're not having that level of conversation, then you need to just slow it down a little bit.
Oh, well, we always have said you got to be a submissive before you can be a dominant.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the rules.
Like, if you didn't know, you got to go through training.
Now you know. Yeah.
Now you got to go through training. But we talked about this briefly in another show, where there are certain personality types that kind of fall into that sexual role. So usually CEOs and business owners and people that are moving and shaking usually want to be submissive. They don't want to think anymore. They don't want to have to deal with anything. They don't want to set the mood. They don't want to do any of those things. And so then you have someone that is usually a caretaker, nurturing, or whatever, and they are the one that is the dominant. I'm kind of a misnomer, because I've been a senior level vice president of a corporation for many years, but I also like being in a dominant role. Now, I started doing dominance years before I even, started off, getting like those C-suite corporate jobs. So I would venture to say that I was more nurturing when I started doing it, and I just kept with it. But I can be a switch. So this is a fun fantasy to fulfill if you have a partner that's willing to trust you, okay? Because being in a dominant role, you do have to take control, and you do have to make sure that you're respectful of the boundaries that that have been set beforehand. But it could be very fun if you have a little bit of a thespian in you, not lesbian, thespian, if you.
Of course, drama queen. So lay me out on display.
Okay, I know you can talk about this. Hold on a second. Let's see.
I'm trying to figure out what that is.
So
lay
it says,
me out.
in today's world of confident women,
Nudity?
I was surprised to learn that many of them fantasize about having an audience while engaging in sexual acts. The consummate exhibitionist. What do you know about this, Madam Wade?
I always like to watch. So, yeah, I mean, that could be a fantasy. I mean, I guess that could be someone's fantasy. As far as me, I mean, I've actually done, I prefer, like, I like being watched. I like watching, I like being watched.
Did you think about it before you did it? Did you fantasize about it before you did it?
No, I didn't fantasize about it.
Okay, it just happened?
It just happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
You kept it in your repertoire?
Yeah, I did. I like to perform. It kind of gets me off a little bit. I like to perform. But, but I guess the thing, and I'm confident, that's the thing. When you are ready to perform, to be watched or to watch, you have to, especially to be watched, you have to be confident. It definitely is a confidence builder. It definitely is, self-esteem. I mean, it's just like, you're a bad bitch, So it's just, I didn't really have a fantasy. I just kind of
So if you were going to give some advice to someone that wanted to step into fulfilling this fantasy, what would be a couple of things that you would say you could do that you could fulfill this fantasy? Like, could you go a particular place, or could you do a particular thing? Yeah,
I mean, the thing is, I will say this, definitely engage in possibly sex clubs, because people don't realize a sex club is not just going in and having sex. It's different things that can happen in there, and they normally have an exhibition room, and the thing is, do it where, and that's the thing with sex clubs. It's like, you may bump into somebody, but if
I see you and you see me,
then you don't see each other. That is the rule. You don't see each other. But that's somewhere, because most likely you're not gonna see someone They're gonna be complete strangers, right? But then if you may bump into each other at the grocery store, but the thing is, you're going to pretty much go along with your day and your conversation as if you didn't just see each other over the weekend.
I think that's like an unspoken rule.
Yeah.
Like, just respect.
Yeah. So I would definitely say, like, go into it. And the reason why I'm saying recommend to just kind of slowly go into it as a sex club, because it's more likely going to be strangers than not. And then because that's going to help build up your confidence, and then go from there. The other thing is, as far as being watched, is start like with your partner or something, doing video chatting, and you're actually playing out or acting out, and you're being watched, to see if you can actually to see if you can actually get through it. And you role play, and you take on that persona or that alter ego, and you'll actually get through it. Reason being is so to see if you start laughing, or if you break character or something like that, because you don't want to get into it and then you get like scared or something, and then it just like stop. Then it becomes a bad experience.
Is it different if you're doing it via video versus, and maybe this is like a gateway to...
No, I'm just saying the steps to lead up to it, because eventually, if you actually want to play out your fantasy, you need to just do it. I mean, get someone you trust to watch you. I've been invited to watch people because they think I'm cool. They think I won't. They think, and
that's what you ask cool people to do.
That is. It's like because you don't want someone judging you. You don't want someone, questioning anything. So it's like, because I make people comfortable, I've had, we've been out and I've had several invitations of people, whether it's lesbian couples or straight couples, and they're just like, I've always had a fantasy of being watched. Can you come watch us watch? And I'm like, sure, if I got some popcorn and wine.
Well, it's not necessarily somebody that that's asking you to do that. You just happen to get invited.
It's people that I know and it's people that I don't know. But I don't know
how I feel about that. I don't know if I would invite somebody I know.
Well, that may not be your fantasy.
No, it's not.
Exactly. So let's move on. So leave a good tip.
Leave a good tip.
What
tell me what that is.
That is, please, if I performed well, you can leave me a little something extra.
Here's a tip. Turn the air conditioning off when we're...
That's another type of tip. Okay, we both went in two different directions. I was like, get paid or pay. Okay. You pay for it or get paid.
Okay, so basically they're saying that the fantasy is that you get a little change.
Oh,
doing something strange.
Oh, okay.
So you do like the stripper role play, patron. Okay, slide a little $100 bill.
That is one of my fantasies.
Is it?
But I already acted that one out. Yeah, that was one of my fantasies.
How'd it go?
Oh, excellent! I had the pole and everything. Again, sex clubs.
Was it at a sex club?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's how I was able to act out my fantasy, because you do the research on the sex clubs. And they have certain rooms.
Yeah.
So that's the best place to go when you want to act out a fantasy.
Yeah.
Is to go to a sex club, because there was different rooms, and one of the rooms was the Scores room, which is a known strip club. And so I went straight for that room,
right.
And I was able to act out, and then okay, well, I actually am a good performer as a stripper. I didn't get any tips, because it wasn't like I should have had a bucket there, but I wasn't looking for any tips.
So this situation, it was with you and your significant
other.
No, you just went in and you was just...
It was me and girls. It was girls' night out.
And
we said it was, because of course you go to a sex club after 2:00.
Of course. Who doesn't know that?
You go to the strip club after 12. You go to the sex club after 2. So
there's a science to this.
Yeah,
okay.
It is. I keep sharing that with everyone. Just listen to me. But yeah. So it was a stripper room, and I had the opportunity to act out that fantasy.
So next time to bring a bucket?
I know next time if I'm performing like that, I would love to get tipped. Shoot.
Okay.
How much an hour can you make?
Break it down into per diem. Okay, so the next thing is to conchu. And I think this is what you were alluding to a little bit earlier, which they say most men enjoy being spoiled by two women, but in the same instance, some women also fantasize about having two men all over their bodies.
I think women fantasize more about having two men, unless she's bisexual.
Right.
Then she'll.
This is a tough fantasy to crack.
And I should take that back. Not just bisexual, or if she's trying to satisfy her man.
Yeah.
So some women, if a man asks for it so much, that women start to fantasize about another woman coming in, or possibly start watching lesbian porn to see, and then you'd be a surprise of, why am I getting off on this? And then it potentially may become a fantasy of yours.
Mm-hmm. So, as far as introducing this fantasy into your life, trying to make it a reality, like, how do you navigate that conversation?
Of bringing two men in, because most women fantasize about two men.
Because that's not common knowledge.
You ask. Yeah, especially with your partner.
Yeah.
You pretty much, I think, to have that conversation, because depending on your partner, whether they're macho or whatever their personality is, because most men are going to beat their chest, right? And be like, is it because you want somebody else? They start questioning themselves, right? Am I satisfying her? So that's where you have to start having that dialogue of, this is a fantasy of mine. And then you kind of slowly engage as far as if we can possibly follow through with it. Now, if it gets shut down, then, you know, ladies, then maybe, you know, might be not be the man for you, or you just don't follow through with it, and then that fantasy is dead. But if you decide to follow through with it, then most likely you probably don't want to be with your significant other or partner. It's something that you may follow through as a single person.
So I'd be interested to find out like what the listeners have experienced if you ever did make that particular fantasy a reality, and how did you do it? How did you transition into the conversation? I don't know. I think if
have
it
you
were
ever
me,
been with two guys?
yes. If I, I'm speaking about the laywoman right now. Okay, so if I were to introduce it, it would probably first be through porn. Like I would see what his reaction is to porn with like two guys and a girl, and see like kind of do a litmus test and see like where he is with that first, and then to just, you know, kind of do a little after conversation. What do you think about that? I don't know. I thought it was hot. I thought it was hot. You didn't think it was hot? Did you think it was hot?
Yeah, I didn't introduce it like that. I introduced it pretty much as far as this is what I want to do, and whoever your friends do you want to bring in to do it.
It was a friend.
It was a friend. It was pretty much like whoever he felt comfortable with. And then we all had a conversation of, and mainly them, like, don't touch me, don't do this, don't do, you know. So it's like creating those boundaries. And see that, and then, you know what, we can get into another conversation of another show, because women having that fantasy and actually acting it out, then we get labeled.
Man.
We get slut shamed. It's like you ran a train on you. No, why is it when you have two women, it's a menage a trois? But then when we actually carry out a fantasy of two men, you ran a train on me. That's so negative. Why can't it be a menage a trois and sounds sexy the way it sounds sexy for you?
Right.
It's the same freaking thing.
Right.
You know, but they say, oh, the definition, everybody has to engage for it to be a menage a trois. Sometimes when you have a man and two women, the two women aren't necessarily always engaging. They're pretty much saying to be categorized as a menage a trois, the men need to be engaging too, like they're bisexual. And that's not even the case. Threesome is exactly what it is, a threesome. And we've had this conversation many times over a lot of, you know, nice cocktails. That we've had this conversation as far as a threesome doesn't even have to be all three in the bed. It could be two in the bed and the third person in the room that's engaging them. That's where we're getting into voyeurism and exhibition again. You know, so the thing is, people need to understand, sometimes you're starting to create your own rules to this.
Right.
You know, and why don't we all categorize it as foreplay?
Yeah. Because foreplay
matters. It really, really does.
And with that, I think that we've come to a close of the show.
You think? Because we had a lot more to talk about.
So much, but
I
you know, we
know.
got the mark. We got the mark.
Yeah, I know.
So you'll just have to join us again.
Yeah, our next show, we're going to have to continue this topic
Yeah.
because we have so much more to talk about this.
Yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for tuning in. Every Wednesday, tune in because it's hump day and it's also foreplay.
Matters.
Because it matters. Well, definitely get to us on our website, secretsociety.life, as well as our Instagram, Secret Society Life. Until next time, au revoir.